Mike and Jeff, you there?
I'm here.
I'm
Okay,
here as well.
excellent. It looks like that audio is working. I didn't notice it was actually working when I was doing the initial setup here, but let's go ahead and get today started.
Well, first of all, I'd just like to give a shout out to Techno Axe. That's that awesome bumpity bump metal stuff you guys heard when the show first started. And I would like to thank Jeff for coming on. Thanks a lot, dude. I have nothing but mad respect for you. And, you've inspired me through the course of your work. Every so often, I'll see another one of your videos, and I'm like, that was just amazing. You bring a higher standard to the auditing and the First Amendment audit or the First Amendment check type stuff. And I just wanted to thank you for coming on.
Hey, thank you. Right back at you. I have a lot of respect for you and David as well. I love y'all's work. It's good stuff, definitely.
Right on. So let's get right into it. The whole point of strategic noncompliance for new listeners is that I reach out and Bunny reaches out to people that aren't conforming to the status quo, and we're trying to increase the knowledge base of how to resist this system of tyranny. So I'll get right into it with Jeff. What was your genesis, man? Like, what was the straw that broke the camel's back type event for you that got you from living your life as kind of like, a normal average Joe, and what brought you into the foray of activism?
Well, as a lot of people know, I'm a professional truck driver, and driving a truck down the road, I see a lot of police activity going on the side of the road, people being searched and things like that. And there's a couple of towns in particular close to where I live in Florida. There's one that's called Lottie, and there's one that's called Waldo. And they're really bad speed trap towns. And I just wanted to, with YouTube coming about and all the stuff that could get out there and show people what's going on, back in 2011, I started a YouTube channel, and I wanted to show everybody that these towns of Lottie and Waldo in Florida were speed traps to hopefully prevent people from getting stopped and given a ticket and getting their car searched and all that type of stuff, and have to deal with these small town redneck cops that nobody wants to deal with anyway. So I was hoping I could put that out there and just avoid some hassle for some people, and that's how it all kind of got started.
Right on. So about what year was this when you first started doing the police accountability, liberty activist type stuff? What year?
It was at the end of 2011, and the beginning of 2012, right around in there. It was right around at that time.
Right on, right on. So your first encounter, let's see, but baby Mike Gray, when he's comes out there with a camera, how did that go down? How were you treated by law enforcement at your first contact as an activist?
My first contact with law enforcement as an activist was in Lottie, Florida. I went down there I was standing on a public sidewalk filming the law enforcement speed trap activity in that little town, and within, I'm standing on the sidewalk pointing my camera at them, and within 5 minutes I'm surrounded by law enforcement, and they're threatening me. They're threatening to snatch my camera from me. They're telling me I'm gonna go to jail. You're gonna go to jail, boy. Why are you out here filming law enforcement? It was quite an introduction to the whole filming law enforcement in the course of their duties type thing, that cop watch. They wound up taking my camera from me, detaining me, threatening to arrest me, and that's how it all started.
Wow, like just right out of the gate, just snatching your camera and stepping on your liberty immediately, huh?
Yeah, and that was back in late 2011 when I very first started, and I had an older camera that was actually had tape in it, and I still think I have that video somewhere. It's never seen the light of day because I've never figured out how to get the video from the actual cassette tape that was in those old camcorders and get it digitized and put on YouTube. So nobody's actually seen that video.
Oh wow, that's like something from the archives, man.
Yeah, and I was eventually arrested in that town. I was in Lottie. I think a lot of people have seen the video. I was standing on the sidewalk holding a sign saying "speed trap ahead," and they came out and arrested me for doing that. Spent the night in jail.
Oh wow! So denying you of your liberty, interfering with your ability to conduct your business, freedom of movement, for daring to interrupt the flow of revenue generation.
Yep, that's right. the way Lottie did it. The chief of police ordered my arrest. You could hear it right on the radio traffic.
What is Jeff's philosophy of accountability activism? What is your modus operandi? If there's other people out there on the interweb and they want to emulate what you do, how would you share your philosophical ideas about what you're doing?
I guess the biggest thing that I want to achieve and accomplish is transparency in government. And that gets right down to our civil right. Photography is not a crime to document what, not just law enforcement, but all public officials, to document what they're doing. We have a right to know what they're doing on our behalf and our expense. That goes hand in hand with filming them and documenting them, and also accessing public records. And so we can see what they're doing and how they're communicating and stuff that they try to do behind the scenes and hide.
So you would consider yourself a constitutionalist, for a lack of a better word?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm definitely a constitutionalist. Politically, I'm a libertarian. Personally, I'm Christian conservative. I live my life in a Christian conservative fashion, but I'm a libertarian. Otherwise, I don't think that I should impose my ideas on everybody else and or use the government to force other people to behave the way I think they should. Libertarian at heart. So.
Right on. Now, your style of police encounters is sometimes you're a little bit sarcastic, but you never go anywhere near to the level of some of us that specialize in heckling and using extreme languages or hyperbole. Do you feel that your Christian faith informs your attitude, the way that you interface with law enforcement? Because you're very polite. You give them all the rope they need to hang themselves, and they usually do. Do you feel that your faith has helped you with I just have to say, an awesome amount of patience, because I would have tore them a new one. Every one of your videos, like in the first 4 or 5 minutes, I would have already started talking about what I'm going to do with their mama. I would have, told them that they're pigs and they're rooting around in the person's car like they're hunting for truffles. Like, do you feel that your Christian faith informs your ability to have that patience?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you asked that question. I don't know if I've really ever put that out there, but my Christian faith definitely try to keep me grounded, keep me humble, and guides me when I'm out there doing what I'm doing. Definitely, for sure. Yeah, no doubt about it.
Right on. So, let's say your typical First Amendment audit by the numbers. How do you go about researching before you show up on a public thoroughfare beside federal property? Can you teach the audience how you do this, like the steps?
Yeah, sure. And I want to go back to what you were saying. Just before this, you have a different style. Daniel Solomon has a different style. Bunny Boots has a different style. And I don't think there's anything wrong with the way some people do it when they get out there. And can I have more banter back and forth with law enforcement? I don't do it. One of the reasons I don't do it, I'm just not as quick-witted as you are. So I have a particular set of responses that I stick with. Everybody has their own style, and there's really nothing wrong with anybody else's type of style. I think it's all good. I like it all.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I find a lot of value in the Bunny Boots kind of tradition of the silent treatment and your polite style and my heckle them to embarrass them. In a multitude of other styles, there's so many people that do this now, and you are one of the progenitors or one of the first big names out there, and you've inspired a lot of folks to do this. The First Amendment audit type things. I've inspired a lot of folks to do cop watching type stuff. I've actually founded a couple of other chapters around the country that wanted to do stuff that are similar to what I'm doing. And cop watching is a lot different than the audit work. Cop watching is actually listening to the police scanner and going on a patrol and policing the police. A First Amendment audit is more like showing up in an area where it's not really a gray area. You're right to clearly do it. Is clearly established by law, is to film from public property. But the micro tyrants, as I call them, the people in uniforms, sometimes not necessarily even the ones with policing powers, just security guards, will try to act as if though they have some authority to demand your video equipment, for instance, or ask you to erase your camera footage and whatnot. And those are succinct differences, but I'm kind of fascinated by the people that just do auditing, because when I'm out doing a patrol and listening to police cameras driving around in the car, I might come across 10 stops that are very innocuous. I mean, and many of them will be police helping people. Sometimes there'll be a cop doing a courtesy ride or helping a mentally ill person find medical treatment, or it might be someone being pulled over and drug out of the car because of the melanin content of their skin. It's very random what I do. But with the First Amendment auditing stuff, Jeff, you're guaranteed to get a response. And there's pros and cons to that, because I've seen a lot of auditors get arrested a lot more than a lot of cop watchers, and the reason why is because these micro tyrants that wear a uniform that sort of looks like a cop's uniform they really overstep their goose stepping, for lack of a better term.
Right. Oh yeah. There's when you do audits, I prefer to call them civil rights investigations now, because that's what I believe I'm doing, is I'm going out and investigating, public employees to see if they're going to comply with our right to hold them accountable through the transparency of filming them and public records also. But when you're doing the civil rights investigations, we're doing the audit. It's the right to film them. Photography is not a crime. You have a right to document what they're doing. And that's a much more controlled environment, where you can plan it, where you can make sure that before you go out, you do some research. You look on Google Earth, Google Maps to make sure there's a sidewalk there. I refer to the sidewalk as the Golden Brick Road. And of course, for the longest time, I got really spoiled when my good friend Thomas Covenant, also known as the Epic Old Guy, who recently passed away. He did a lot of the research for me, and it's a combination of both things. A lot of it is planning ahead, doing the research, looking on Google's Maps, Google Earth, and doing other searches on there about the police station, everything, or whatever type of entity you're going to go investigate. But a lot of times it's just driving down the road and seeing a facility that looks like a secure facility, and just saying, hey, I wonder what will happen if I get out and point my camera towards this government building, whatever it might be. A lot of it's just stumbling across it. A lot of it's research ahead of time. So it's both things. It's both things. And I do some cop watching myself. I do it more as through the Stringer app. I go out and respond to scenes of accidents and fires and shootings and things like that in the local area that I do for Stringer, which is an app that the local news media uses. And you go out and they send you to a certain area to cover an accident, say. And that's a much more risky situation, because a lot of times you're going out at night like you do, Mike. Yeah. And, the cops can be a little more hostile when you're out there at night and you're filming an accident scene. Even, I've had, that's not only law enforcement, it's other first responders such as fire rescue. I've even had a guy from the Red Cross tell me that I needed to go home one night.
Oh, how adorable! Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was not exactly my normal polite self with that gentleman. I told him to basically piss off and shut his mouth.
Well,
sometimes Red Cross. Are you kidding me?
Sometimes it must be done, Jeff. It must.
It absolutely does.
When a tyrant bears his neck, sometimes it's important to step on it. But that reminds me of something, and I'm going to ask you if you encounter this. When I'm filming either an accident scene or an encounter with the police that ended up in a use of force being used, and the police are waiting for medical to show up, I get first responders like EMTs or ambulance drivers, or either people from a coroner's office out here telling me that it's a HIPAA violation for me to film in public. Do they ever try that BS with you, where they say you're violating HIPAA if you're filming this violent scene outside in the world?
Absolutely, that's par for the course. It's a combination of both things. You have first responders that actually believe that's true, and you have first responders that know that it's not true, but still try to intimidate you. They tell you it's a HIPAA violation. They tell you it's a crime scene. You can't film it because it's a crime scene. They'll shine their lights in your camera to blind your camera. They will they'll actually stop rendering aid to a victim in some cases that I've experienced, and turn their attention to you, shining their lights in your camera, moving equipment to block your view, which is stupid because you just moved down the road a few more feet. You can still see the scene. Placing their bodies in front of the scene, extending the crime scene tape. It's really childish. It's really silly. If they would just do their jobs and just leave us alone and let us do our jobs, what we're there to do,
it is childish, and I've seen a lot of sophomoric stuff. I've had cops do all the very same things to me, driving the car in front of my sight line, shining the flashlight at me. I've been threatened with arrest and told I was interfering while I'm filming, and that resulted in a bunch of, more times than I can count, a string of expletives. What I'm a big fan of doing is when something that I'll do is like, when they make a threat, even if it's the most innocuous one, if it's a hinted threat, I always say, you know what? If you think I'm doing something illegal, I'll put my hands behind my back right now and I'll walk over to you, and you can arrest me. If not, F off. I won't physically resist you. Go ahead and take me then. But everybody has to know their limits. I tell people that when they first want to start cop watching, that you have to know your limits. You have to research what your civil rights are. You have to research the difference between detention and arrest. You have to know if you're willing to go to jail or not, because when you do this, it's not a matter of if I'm going to get arrested, hypothetically. It's a matter of when.
That's absolutely correct. Yeah, you're 100% correct. You're going to, if you go out and you do this with any regularity, or a lot of people, they might get arrested the very first time they point a camera at a law enforcement officer or an accident scene or a fire. It's really disgraceful in America that happens. But one thing I definitely want people to understand is, when you go out and you do any kind of, whether it's cop watching, whether you're doing civil rights investigations, audits, you are definitely putting your freedom at risk, your treasure at risk, and even your life at risk. Because I've had guns drawn on me more than once, going out there and just doing nothing more than pointing my camera at public officials.
I know of these stories, but can you give one example of when a law enforcement officer aimed a weapon at you while you're filming?
I haven't had one actually point their weapon out at me. I've had them take it out of the holster and hold it at what they call the low ready. And that was back when I was doing Second Amendment investigations or Second Amendment audits, when I would open carry in the state of Florida while fishing, which is legal here, but it's not a very well-known law because not a lot of people do it. It's not
wow. And you were just holding your camera, right? And your other hand was out in plain view?
Right. I was open carrying. My firearm was in a holster, and I was walking back to my car. I was actually getting ready to go home, and that's when gosh, I can't even remember what police department it was. It was a city. It was a municipality. They arrived and detained me, and he drew his weapon and kept it at the low ready, and ordered me to keep my hands where he could see them at all times. I was up in Brunswick, Georgia, at the the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. It's called FLETC. It's like FLETC is an abbreviation. Mm-hmm. Florida Law Enforcement Training Center. It's a federal facility where they train law enforcement from all over the country.
Now, is Florida open carry?
Florida is open carry when you are hunting, fishing, camping, or going to or from such an event.
Okay. So, yep. You're definitely in compliance with the law. Like, how's that make you feel? Like, honestly, to have a cop approach you when you're doing something that's perfectly legal, and you're basically being menaced with a lethal weapon at that point.
Well, it's definitely scary. Your life is at risk. I actually don't do that anymore because I'm afraid of getting shot by the police, so I don't exercise that right anymore. Just to be honest with you, it's too risky. Thomas actually talked me out of doing it. He said, "Don't do the open carry audits anymore," so I don't. But yeah, it's really disturbing to know that you have some of your rights in America, but if you exercise those rights, you take a risk of being shot, killed by law enforcement who should know better, who should know the law.
Yeah, I totally want to touch on something you reminded me of there, Jeff, is the simple fact that police on the regular, they do actions that would, if a citizen were to do these same actions, the police would shoot them on the spot. Like, for instance, I just spent about an hour and a half, scanning around your channel, and, you know, one of the common themes is when cops are talking to you, they'll sit there and they'll put their hand on top of their pistol while they're talking to you. I mean,
yeah, they like to rest their hands and their arms on their pistol. Actually, rest their hands right on the grip of the pistol there. Yeah, that's troubling.
It's troubling. But like, if you were to do that near a cop, they just shoot you dead right there. But they're able to do this, and they expect the citizenry to just tolerate that. And there's something like I spend a lot of time reading police reports and trying to do. I try to be objective. I mean, my focus of activism is very anti-authoritarian. I don't believe, as an anarchist, I don't believe that government has the legitimate. They have no more legitimacy. There is no more moral, mandate from them that I can believe that they have the right to initiate force against other human beings at this point. There is no republic, there is no constitutional republic anymore. It's in name only. I mean, the reason why I'm an anarchist is because I believe government is completely illegitimate. It predicates and sustains itself on nothing more at this point than the actual use or the implied use of force. Everything is about a different level of threat with them. So the reason why I'm an anarchist, Jeff, is because I would rather live a moral, just life, and I would rather go along to get along. I would rather, live and let live, and try to live my life and conduct my life on my own moral compass, and try to be a good person. But I don't need government to squat on top of me and act as if though they're an arbiter on my behalf. I mean, that's why prosecutors claim that the state is a victim on behalf of someone else. They're like the state versus blah blah blah. A lot of times, if people fight in the street in Oregon, and both parties say we're good, we're done fighting. The prosecutor, the district attorney, can still turn around and say, oh, well, both of you are victims. You both get Measure 11 assault charges, or Subject A gets Measure 11 assault charges, but Subject B doesn't. The state claims the super ultra extra right to be a victim on behalf of the people, and there's so much logical inconsistency with the way that government interfaces with the people that it claims that it's representing, that I would rather try to go about my life in a moral, ethical way without government. And that's what it is for me, is personal responsibility. I believe that if people would take it upon themselves to not try and to psychologically depend on government, this whole entitlement stuff and, government interacting and being part of someone's life from the time that they're, putting their baby footprints on their birth certificate until they're dead. And even after they're dead, there's a death tax, for God's sakes. I just don't feel like they have any legitimacy. And that's one of the primary reasons why I'm so interested in other people's civil rights and their civil liberties, is because it's my own self-interest. I am interested in defending a Christian, a communist, a liberal, a social justice warrior. All these people, I believe they have natural human rights that predated the Constitution, and I'm interested in defending everyone's civil liberties as if though they were mine. And if other people would do that, if they would stand up for one another, I think we'd live in a more ethical society and we wouldn't need as much government. And as a constitutionalist, what are your thoughts about this?
I agree with you pretty much. Fully agree with you. I try to set myself I try to set my my brain to default to individual liberty whenever considering or contemplating an issue. I always try to set my brain to default to the individual liberty aspect of it. Unfortunately, the majority of people, not just Americans, the majority of people don't do that. They do the opposite basically, and they kind of set their brain to default to what needs to be done to make this person behave the way I think they should behave, and that's one of our big problems. Is that people think that they need to have government control other people's lives, and that's why we are in the trouble that we're in right now. And I think they're educated to think that way. I think it's been set up to be thought that way, that where people have a thought process to where they are dependent on government, and it's just a sad situation, you know.
So I've never met a conspiracy theory I didn't like. So this is a nice segue. Do you believe that the curriculum in the public school system is designed to produce conformant authoritarians? Do you think it's a methodical thing, or do you think that's just where our culture has ended up?
I think I think definitely the curriculum in the schools are designed to produce compliant people that go out and behave the way that the government wants them to behave, and pay taxes, and not really question authority, and just kind of go about their lives. That's yeah, definitely. It's all about compliance and paying taxes and so on and so forth.
It's kind of like America is a big herd of animals, and every once in a while the big line of government takes down another gazelle. But hey, that guy's a little slower. He's towards the end of the line. I'm still strong and spry. I can run towards the front of the pack. It's no big deal.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons that we we receive so much hostility, because we're not normal when we go out there and law enforcement encounters us. They're accustomed to people that are compliant. When they demand ID, people just give up their ID. When they ask them questions, they expect people to answer their questions. If you're being polite, even if you're politely asserting your rights, like I try to do, it's the person is being non-cooperative or combative. Even I've been described as being combative when I go back and watch the video, and it's like, where was I being combative? And so that makes it harder. It makes it even harder for us to stand up for our individual rights, because so many other people just won't do it. And so that makes it easier for them to demonize us and make us look like radical people. I've been called a sovereign citizen, which I've never had any affiliation with the sovereign citizen movement. I don't have an opinion one way or the other about them. I've never been a part of it myself. I'm on basically the fusion center of Florida. They placed me as a sovereign citizen who is a threat to law enforcement